transformation in a practice, in a specialty practice, particularly in a specialty practice, can occur 3 weeks from now, 4 weeks from now, because you're only appointed 3 or 4 weeks out at the most. And so if I want to change something, I can change it quickly if I'm committed to the process of change. So what is my belief system? And that's the first thing that I need to take a look at and program. And so self-belief is where the inspiration comes, the energy comes, where the commitment to execution comes. Because if you believe, right, how many would build a facility like this with 4 employees? It took a lot of belief, right, on my part and the people that supported me to build something like this, create what we have today. So belief is what overcomes obstacles. The stronger my belief in what it is that I'm doing, the more I'm able to implement and execute. It's that simple. So the first part of belief is what I call being the best mindset. That's center to everything that I do in my life. So being the best doesn't mean, I know I put the word number 1 there, being the best doesn't mean that I want to be better than other people. Being the best means, what is myself best? How can I be the very best in my health? Now, it's not going to occur because I said I want to be the very best in my health. I've got to then do the next thing. I've got to program my workouts. I've got to program my eating correctly because I got to eat healthy. I got to work out healthy. I got to program my mindset around how, because it's, if I love what I do and I enjoy what I do, health improves with that. So being the best, I want to be the best spouse. And so when I lost her 13 years ago, but we were married 28 years, and there wasn't a week that went by where we didn't have 2 date nights. And it didn't matter what was going on. Because we knew that if we just gave each other 90 minutes twice a week, where we were just about each other, where we focused on each other, and that's not a lot to ask for. So being in the best marriage wasn't about what we say to each other on the day we got married. It was how we practiced what we say to each other when we got married. Right? So that date night became center to our relationship. It's where we talked about each other, where we poured our hearts out to each other, where we cried on each other's shoulder, where we celebrated together. That was really, really important. So I wanted to be the best spouse. What does that mean? What does it require of me? I want to be the best father. What does that mean? I want to be the world's best grandpa. And what does that mean, right? And so Liam is only 8 weeks old. I'll show you pictures later, but the crazy part is, Kaleem and Liz were married for 4 years, and they weren't going to have children. They didn't want children in the beginning because they wanted to travel the world, and had this gorgeous home they built, which was really not meant for children. And so when they decided to have children, they sold the house. My other son bought it, Rizwan, and then they bought another one that needed 9 months worth of renovation. So I snuck in there and talked both of them into moving in with me, because why would you rent when you can stay here? And then I started reading books about how to be a great grandpa. I kid you not. And Lizzie finally said to me, "You've got it, Dad. Don't worry about it. You're going to be a great..." And so today I see him every morning. I see him every evening. I sneak in as much time as I can. I'm the default babysitter. But that requires me making the commitment that I was going to organize my life around being a great grandpa. So being the best, I want to be the best. If I'm a receptionist, I want to be the world's best at that. If I'm going to be a hygienist, I'm going to be the world's best at that. If I'm going to be the specialist, I'm going to be the world's best at that. And so that first step in being the best is about making the commitment to yourself that I'm going to do what I need to do to always be the best version of myself, which means I've got to surround myself with the right people. I've got to read the right books. I've got to have goals to improve what it is that I do. So all that goes with that mindset. And being the best is something that we do both personally and professionally. Now, in order for me to set goals for myself, whether it's in my practice or my personal life, I've got to understand what are the possibilities. And when you think about possibilities, if I say to you, what can you do next week? You lower your expectation because you got to do it next week. But if I say to you, you have a magic wand, where would you like to be 5 years from now? all of a sudden, because you don't have to do it on Monday, what do? You think big. So possibility is saying, if I had everything organized the way that I wanted, what is that possibility? What are the possibilities of that referring doctor? I've got 40, 100, whatever it is that's referring to me, and 20 of them are referring once a year. I don't look at them as C's, I look at them as A's. Because if I can just get them to go from once a year to once a month, I've got a very successful practice. So what are the possibilities? So as a person that is possibilities thinking is believing that I'm going to have the best referral relationship with those doctors, and they will refer to me once a week, once a month, whatever that belief is for me. So what are the possibilities? And when you think about possibilities, you got to think about the value to those possibilities. So if I have a referring doctor that's referring to me once a year, maybe a case that's $2,000, if they started doing that once a month, their value went from $2,000 to $24,000 in referral value. I'm not putting a dollar value on the referring doctor, I'm putting a relationship value that happens to be matched by an economic number, but I can only get one a month if I have that relationship. So what is the value of that possibility? So I don't go after every possibility. I would just be running around doing a bunch of little things. So when I look at possibilities, I look at what is the value of the possibility and is it worth my time? The second part of that, of course, is the journey. So once I know what's possible, what do I need to do? What do I need to learn? What do I need to implement? How do I get there? And that's really the breadth and depth of implementation. And the final piece is self-awareness. So self-awareness is not trying to explain why something didn't work. Self-awareness is saying it didn't work. What is it that I can do differently? Right? We're not self-aware because anytime something doesn't work, what do? We tend to look outside. We don't look at what is our role in it. We tend to look outside. So do I have the self-awareness? If I say to you, Dr. Manji refers to you, how self-aware are you of the nature of your relationship? So what's that nature? Are they referring just particular case types? Are they referring when their specialist isn't in town? Are they referring just their family to you? When was the last time they referred? When was the last time that you interacted with them? What is your awareness of your client called the restorative doctor in their relationship with you both on a professional basis and a personal basis? And so that awareness is incredibly important. When I respect somebody, I'm aware, right? So when you send stuff in, I read everything that you said. I absolutely read. I have a sitting chart on you. I know exactly where you're seated. I've already rated you on the quality of your data, and you think I'm a genius, but I'm not. I just have a sitting chart, and just like you do your morning meetings to look at who's coming in, I know everything that I need to know about you, that our team knows, that you've sent to us, and your history with us. And I know who's new. And so the idea of self-awareness is really an important idea. How aware are you of the patients that are coming in that day? Who referred them? The person that referred them, when was the last time they referred to you? What was the case that they referred to you? Right? And so are they referring just prescriptively to you? Are they referring comprehensively to you? So those are all things around awareness. So the first principle of self-belief is really believing in the possibilities that you have and then understanding what it means to achieve those possibilities. So I'm going to basically tell you that in order to be successful in life, you have to be radically open-minded. Because when you get caught in what you know how to do, right, you're doing what you know how to do, and then so your end result is already forecasted. So unless, and by the way, you also are trying to do what you know what you need to do, but you don't have time for, right? But if you don't change what you do, your future is what it is today. You will grow incrementally, but your future is what it is today. So being radically open-minded is an unbelievably important thing to growth because that gives you energy to an enthusiasm to drive towards your possibility. Because you're open-minded, you're willing to learn, you're willing to listen, you're willing to embrace. But if you say, yeah, I think it should work, I'll try it, and if it doesn't work, I'll stop, That's not self-belief. Because a lot of things we do that way. I'll just try it, and if it doesn't work, I'll do something different. That's not self-belief. Self-belief is, I know it's going to work. It may not work the way I just did it. I'm going to find a new way. Does that make sense, right? So that's where self-belief is so important. There was a study and an article written by, I forget the guy's name, out of Harvard, and this was a powerful statement he made. We're the average of 5 people that we spend the most time with, which is why we worry about when our children are growing up, who are they hanging out with, right? And so our practice is going to be kind of the value of the people that we hang with, right? And so this idea is really, really important. Now, this is National Health, and it's an old study. It was revised in 2017. It looks approximately the same, where they did a study on missing teeth in the mouth. And they looked at the active patient base. So if you've been to a dentist in the last 2 years, that's what they looked at, and not counting third molars, as to how many teeth were missing. And these are adult patients. So it was 3.742 missing teeth per patient. So in 1,000 adult patients in a practice, right, if they have 1,000 adult patients, there will be 3,742 teeth missing. And if you have 40 referring doctors, the possibilities of implants, which not all of them will be implants, I get it, but the possibility is 149,000. Even if it was 2/3 of them didn't need implants, it wouldn't make any difference. The average restorative practitioner is sitting with way more than they're referring, and they're sitting in hygiene. They're what we call parked cases in hygiene, right? And so what are the market possibilities, right? I don't care how many people learn how to do it, they will never be able to do everything that needs to be done. And if you look at the national data, and we look at where America fits in the world, in implants per capita, we're in, I think, number 12 on the list. I think Korea is number 1. Right? So value is not what is being done. When I look at value, I look at what is not being done. How many people understood what I just said, right? So this person may be doing 3 or 4 on their own a month, but there's much more than that in their practice. So what is not being done, and why is it not being done, and how can I be a good partner with them? So it's what's not being done. So when we look at possibilities of dentistry, the thing that you have to think about is clinical mastery. As you've heard from Frank many times, as Martin just said, you can only do what you see, and you can only see what you know. So the more I see, the more disturbed I get, the bigger my gap, right? So clinical mastery is important in comprehensive care. Now, mastery doesn't mean I'm this super clinician. Mastery means I'm learning how to treatment plan, and I've got a path of clinical excellence, and I'm staying current in my knowledge. That's what mastery means to me. So the first step in doing great, you can't do great dentistry as a solo practitioner. Great dentistry requires that I become an interdisciplinary dentist because I can't do it all myself. So the second step is there a clinical partnership? Do I have a clinical partnership? So if I'm a restorative doctor, if I'm engaged in clinical learning, for me to do better clinical dentistry, I need a clinical partner that is a specialist. Periodontists, oral surgeons, endo, ortho. So I need my clinical partnership. And that clinical partnership has one thing in common. Let's do better dentistry together, because when we do better dentistry together, both practices grow. And then the third part is value partnership. Right? I only get to be a partner if we value each other's relationship. And so if I am on a journey as a clinician on my clinical mastery, which is, by the way, lifelong in nature, and I want to do great dentistry, I've got to have a clinical partner. I've always got to be working with specialists. And if I'm going to be working with specialists, I need there to be value that bonds us together. So value partnership is about helping the patient say yes, because I'm going to promise you this, by the way, patients don't dream about you. They don't say, I'm going to save money so I can go to the specialist and the restorative doctor. You understand that, right? I have 2 therapists, by the way. One is the Apple store, right? And I'll go there about every 8 to 10 weeks. And I'll stand there and I'll watch all the people that come in with their cell phones. And then I'll see them walk out with new cell phones. They'll come in without iPads and walk out with iPads, come in with iPads and walk out with iPads. And my goal is always to stop one person that walks in with something they have and then they walk out with something else replacing. And so whether it's a cell phone or an iPad, I say, hey, you just bought a new iPad. Tell me what made you buy it? He said, well, it's smaller, it's faster. I said, that's awesome, but you have one. I said, yeah, but it's now a year old and this one is much better. And I would say, then, and how often do you use it? Oh, at least twice a day, but really about once a week when I sit at home and I want to. And then I'll say, so what are you going to do with the old one? I don't know. I might give it to my niece or my nephew. They never said, will my insurance company pay for this? They didn't wait in a line. Somebody brought it to them. It was they took it apart, made sure that it was apart, so that now they pay for it, and they walk out with a bag. Right? And so think about what I'm saying. How many millions are spent on stuff that we don't need? The average person that is in the Apple store spends more money on their phone system and their iPad system and the internet and all that good stuff than they do on their mouth, if you take a 5-year view. Right? Go to Vegas, right? And I go to Vegas maybe once a year to see a show. And I don't like to gamble, right? And so when you make a reservation, you go out to dinner, they usually make you wait, and they have all these foo-foo drinks that you pay like obscene amounts of money per drink, right? And so I'm having my glass of wine, and there's a bunch of us, and so I decide to go because they're on their second round, and I fall asleep after a second drink, so I kind of pace myself. So I'm walking around with my wine. I always find a gambling table, and I'll look at who's gambling, and if they give me a smile, I'll go over, and I'll ask, are you winning? And this answer last time was so wonderful. It says, no, not really, but I have a budget. I'm thinking a budget. That's interesting. I said, oh, so what's your budget? And he says to me, well, after I spend $3,000, I'm going to stop. Right? And of course, if it's 3,000, what do you think it'll become? About 4 or 5 or 6, right? And then I'm thinking, okay, so I've got to do, because I'm looking at this person, they're smiling and their mouth is god-awful ugly, right? And so I'm now thinking, okay, so tell me, where are you staying? And he said, the Wynn. I said, well, that's where I'm staying. And he said, have you entered the restaurants there? Yeah. Which one do you like? Have you been to a show? Have you been to the spa? Did you come with your spouse? I'm just doing the math on what they're going to drop in the next 4 days, right? And when I got done, the minimum they were going to spend was, and there's no coverage for it, right? And their mouth needs a bunch of dentistry. So we're in a society where the patient is 3 things. The patient is a patient when their mouth is open, because that's when we're doing the dentistry. They're a client when we're communicating with them. But the third thing, they're the most important person, is when they're doing what? When they're making a decision. They're a consumer. Do I want to spend my time and money? Because 70, 80, 90, some people say more than 90% of the dentistry we do, but whatever it is, it's a significant portion of the dentistry we do is discretionary in nature. Yes or no? Right? It's discretionary in nature. If I pull a tooth out, I don't really have to do an implant. I can leave it open there. I don't really have to go to the hygienist twice a year. I can go every 4 years, right? Because the implication isn't short term, it's long term. And anything that has a long term, unless I'm in pain, I'm going to be motivated. But anything that's long term implication, I can put it off, and I don't, because it doesn't affect me today. And anything that doesn't affect me today, I don't need to make a decision. And they're sitting in your reception area, by the way, waiting for you, buying a television. Right? And then you talk to them about your implant. So my point is, we need a value partnership. Patients have to value their care. The first thing they have to understand is 2 sides to case acceptance. The first side is, this is my condition, and I own it. And the second side is, do I want to do something about it, right? So we've got to get good at that. And so the only way we get to market possibilities is if we are on a journey of clinical excellence, where we have a value partnership, a clinical partnership, and we have a value partnership where when I send my restorative doctor, I send a patient to you, I know that they'll come back with the case accepted both for them and for me, and we're going to work together on it. So that's the value partnership I talk about. What is the value of me sending a patient to you? Are they coming back to me, and are they coming back ready for the dentistry that I would do after you're done? Because usually what you do is an interim step to what the restorative doctor needs to do. So that's the idea of the practice possibility. So what is your belief around your capacity in your practice and your market? And then what is your belief in the trusted partnerships that you can create around mutual growth? So the first exercise we're going to do, I'm going to kind of walk you through it. If you go to your handout, to page 1-13, and then go to the next page, and then the page after this. So these 3 pages I'm going to deal with. On 1-13, I'm asking you to answer 4 questions. The first question is, what is your practice possibility for growth? What do you believe your practice possibility for growth is? The second question I'm going to have you answer, and I'll tell you where you're answering it, is what is your average case value in case acceptance? Now, if you don't know it, that's okay, just approximate it. Okay? The third is, how many new patients do you need to meet that goal? So for example, if I'm just making this $1 million a year, and I want to grow to 1.2 million, and I'm doing $1 million on 80 referrals a month, how many more referrals do I need to get to 1.2? Does that make sense, everybody? Right? So I'm starting with, what is your practice possibility for growth? What do you believe, if you put time and energy into your referring doctors, into your patients, what do you believe you could grow? What is your practice possibility for growth? What is your current average case value? So if your average case value is $2,500 and case acceptance is 60%, right, as an example, I'm just making that up, then how many new patients do you need to meet your goals? Well, you can either increase your new patient flow or you can increase your case acceptance in that example. So I might want to go from 60% to 70% and then increase my new patient flow by 10%, and then I get to my goal. So what is the math there in your opinion? And then how many referral sources do you need in a clinical partnership with you? Right? Now, I want you all to look up at me. Would you ever do dentistry without records? Of course not, right? And so if you can't answer this, that should create a disturbance in you. And I'm later on going to put a knife in it and turn it to make sure you're really disturbed, right? Because how can you grow unless you have this understanding, right? What do I want to grow by? How many more new patients do I need? What should my case acceptance be? And therefore, how many referring doctors do I need to work with to get to that target? Because all of this is all patient-centered, right? So those are the 4 questions I'm going to have you take 5 minutes to answer. I've given you this little 1-pager handout that deals with this self-belief principle. If you look at the top of, let's look at the top part first, being the best. So in order to be the best, you must look at what is your possibility, right? By the way, we are all 4 times more capable than we think we are, right? Whenever Kaleem or Rizwan came home with a mark that was below what A, Shanul, and they would complain about the teacher, Shanul would ask them, are you being true to yourself? Right? So the gap between possibility and being the best is really your capacity for growth. So you decide what being the best means to you, decide what your possibilities are, and then you decide journey to that possibility. What do I have to do to get there? And you become really self-aware. Are you really doing it? So if I went to a study club, how many study club leaders here? Let me see a show of hands again. Right? If I went to a study club, do I spend an hour before my 15 or 12 members arrive and look at their history with me? And say, what was the last referral they sent to me? What was the case type? What are the case types that they've sent to me? When was the last time I had a discussion with them? This study club module that I'm doing, is it a case that I may want them to bring one of their cases with them? Have I communicated that to them? Have I had my PRD go visit them? Right? If I don't do those things just because they come to your study club meeting, what makes you think they should refer to you? And by the way, they already know when you start a study club, it's because you want them to refer. You're not fooling them. They already know that. And they join because they want to grow and learn with you. So are you prepared for it? If I did a case study on you, you guys suck at running your study clubs. How many would agree with that statement, by the way, right? Because you show up, you finish just in time, and you get there, and you know you're going to give them wine. You say, thank God there's wine, right? And then you bring up Frank or Greg or whoever it is, and you play discussion, and you drink more wine, and then you have a little bit of discussion, and then everybody leaves. That is not a study club meeting. That is a social gathering. Education without action is entertainment. Right? That's necessary. A good study club has a social aspect to it. It has camaraderie to it. But you've got to be prepared on how prepared you were before, what you do during, and what you do after. And I'm really excited for Martin to teach you that later. Then you go to the will there, and it says clinical mastery. So in the bottom it says capacity and value. I can promise you, by the way, there's people in this room whose average day is $5,000 a day in revenue. And there's people in this room whose average day is $10,000 in value. And the $5,000 person and the $10,000 person, it is not about the $10,000 person is doing things fast and poorly because they wouldn't have a practice, because they rely on referrals. It's because how organized they are with their template, it's the case types, how they work with their assistants, how much they delegate to the treatment coordinator. There's a whole science to it. So don't think about, when you're setting your capacity, I don't want you to think about your current circumstances. I've fired you all from your practice. You no longer work for your practice. I'm going to rehire you on Saturday at noon when you go back, right? So you're now looking at your practice from the outside in, and you'll decide what you're going to do and not do when we get to Saturday. But for now, I want you to think about, if I had everything organized and I had the referrals, what would my capacity be? That's the space I want you to be in. Everybody with me? Because if you think that you can only do 8,000 a day and you're doing 6, we'll help you get there. But it is important that you set your belief where you believe it is, and not be afraid to change it, by the way, in the next few days. So, Stroman happens to be here, and we're really good partners together. We don't pay each other to support each other. And I'm always amazed when I sit down with a Stroman representative and take a look at, okay, how much is this person doing with you, and how much is this person doing? They have clients that do 900 implants a year to clients that do 200 implants a year. The guy that does 200, by the way, the guy that does 200 thinks that the guy at 900 is the devil. Why? They can't see beyond 250. Right? The guy that does 600 thinks they might do 650. The guy that does 700 thinks they might do 750, but this guy at 900 is thinking, okay, I'm now saturated, let me bring in an associate. That's the difference. Does that make sense? And that's a solo practitioner, by the way. So outside is clinical mastery. We're always going to do what's in the best interest of the patient and do the best dentistry. The second circle is a clinical partnership. The third circle is partnership. And the fourth circle is practice possibilities. And in the middle is capacity and value. So I want to be at capacity. No matter what I do, I want to be at capacity. Capacity in this auditorium with 280 people, but we've allowed 100 of you in here because this is a workshop done in the auditorium. If we were doing a lecture, I'd want 300 people. That would be the capacity. And then it's not just one lecture. This capacity could be filled 40 times a year because there's 40 times that we can do Thursday, Friday, and 40 times that we can do Friday, Saturday. So the capacity is a very important concept. You have 6 chairs, you have 3 assistants, you have 2 people at the front desk. If you're periodontist, you have 1 hygienist. What is the capacity of your facility, and what is the capacity of what you're doing, and what are you doing? Because that gives me what the possibilities are. Are you guys with me so far? So let's just take 5 minutes to briefly think about the 4 questions, which is on the next page. They're listed for you with lots of lines to write. What is your practice possibility for growth? And by smile and say this to you, 20%. Just trust me, and if you have trouble writing 20%, put your hand up, I'll come and I'll hold your hand, and we'll write it together, right? Because there's no one in this room, and I've looked at your data, that can't grow by 20%. That's our average growth in the Master's Workshop program. That's our average growth, okay? So if you don't know your numbers, just go with 20%, but then say, put a frown on it that you don't know your numbers. So you go back and you figure it out. What is your average case value in case acceptance? Why is that important? Because it gives me an idea. What do I want to focus on? If my average case value is 1,500 and I know 2,500 is the best practice, then I need to focus on the case types that I'm getting. And then if my case acceptance is 65% and the average is 85%, I also know I need to focus on case acceptance. So what am I focused on? More referrals? Or more of the right case types of referrals? Or am I focused on case acceptance? Everybody understand that? And then, once I understand what growth I want, and what average case value is, and what my case acceptance is, I then figure out how many new patients do I think I need, so therefore my strategies with my referring doctors, and then how many referring doctors do I need. And so there are 5 levers I pull. I pull case types, because if I have a great relationship with David and I'm sending him all my perio work, but nothing to do with implants for whatever reason, implants would be what I would target. I already have the relationship on the perio side, but I don't have it on implants. And if I'm getting the implants and I'm getting the perio, but I've not seen a full arch case in the last 2 years, that's where I can go with MTS. So this is a very important insight that you need to have. Everybody with me? Everybody clear? And by the way, I measure the success of a relationship on that I'm getting at least one full arch case a year from anybody that's referring to me. Because when I get that forces the partnership in clinical care. Now we have to work together. We learn how to communicate with each other. We learn how to work with our lab. We learn so much more, right? It takes a little more time, but it's not just about a full arch. In that time, I'm getting deeper with them in the partnership. So let's just take 3 more minutes. So I want you to notice what they did. They've come as a team, and they couldn't all talk to each other. So what did they do? They came up to the front, and they huddled. I didn't have to tell them to do that. That's self-leadership. So congratulations. You know, if you've written anything less than 20%, I'm going to shoot you, because going down the stairs means you're at the 30% mark. Yeah. You're familiar. You have been here. Shame on me. I'm sorry. But at least I recognized you. Yeah. Okay. Any questions for me? How many people are asking the right questions now? For example, the question here was, if I have like a very simple site to all the way to 4 or 6 implants, like how does that work from an average value? And I said, don't worry about that, because I just want the average value. Because if I've got 700 referrals a year coming in, I just want the average value, right? How we focus our strategies depends on the referrals that I'm getting, the case types that I'm getting, and what strategies do I need to be comprehensive to them, right? Another great question is, there's somebody else in town that is doing all the full arch cases, and we do them as well, but how do we compete with that? Because I'm going to answer those questions as well. There was another question around how accurate do I need to be? And I want you to know that we're not doing tax returns here or financial statements. In growth, in the visionary side, you just need to be approximate, right? So if I've got 800 patients a year coming in as referrals approximately, then my growth, if I want it to be 20%, I might need 900 based on case types. But I haven't pulled the lever on case acceptance, right? Because if I pull the lever on case acceptance, even by 10%, it can make a big difference to my revenue stream, right? Another question is, what about the overhead? I want to answer that question. I came from a world where I used to own Mercer. I was the CEO of Mercer, and I saw a lot of financials. And I'd put a lot of energy into your staff ratio should be the X amount, and your rent and facility ratio should be Y, and we should do that. We should do that. But as I got more mature, the question I would ask myself is your overhead high or is your revenue low? Because it isn't about overhead, because expense management after a certain point is a race to the bottom, right? Revenue, I want you to write this down. Revenue, now first of all, before I have you write this down, this is spear education. This is about clinical excellence. I'm making the assumption that clinical excellence will always be at the center of everything we do. But clinical excellence and economic excellence can live together. Absolutely live together. So when I say this next statement, revenue fixes everything. And you can only do quality revenue when you do quality cases, which people need and want, right? And so when we go further with this statement, and this is really important to get, overhead is 100% until you break even. And in dentistry, you get to break even around September, if you're lucky, if you look at the 12-month period. How many people understand what I'm saying? I've got to look at ratios, but overhead is 100% until I break even. After I break even, my costs in it are incremental in nature. So there are supplies, there are lab, there are parts and pieces. And so the most important revenue is usually the revenue that I add now, because more of it is what allows me to be profitable enough to continue to invest in my clinical skills and in my growth and in my community. Does that make sense, everybody? Right? So this is why this part of it is so important to understand what is my target and and believing that you can actually hit the target, but being practical about it. Everybody with me? So that brings me to the statement that I always say, you take yourself with you, right? And so whatever your story is, that becomes your reality. And so self-belief is about getting your story right, getting your vision right, getting your values right. Everybody with me? Okay, so what is your practice possibility for growth? What is your average case value and case acceptance? How many new patients do I need? And how many referral sources? That's then allows me to be surgical in my growth, be really surgical in my growth. That turns the way that I run my study clubs and the number of people that I have in my study club. And I'm going to talk about that as well. So again, it's okay to be approximately right here. And by the way, it's a key value of a visionary. A visionary is exceptionally frustrated by financial people. So your accountant will say, what are you spending at Spear? I can't believe how much you're spending at Spear. So your accountant will, can't you get cheaper education? Right? But they won't see, well, wait a minute, you grew 20% or 15%, right? They don't want to look, so and not all accountants are that way, but they look at the rearview mirror, right? A visionary looks forward. And when you look forward, you have to be approximate. How do you know that it's going to work? You don't. So your self-belief has to drive that, right? So it's okay to be approximate. So don't get hung up and you go back and you pour over your referral reports. It's very easy. There's only 5 pieces of data that you need to do your entire year's plan. And I'll give you clarity on what that is as we get closer. So second principle is entrepreneurial. And what do I mean by entrepreneurial? Dentists are entrepreneurial people. You went to school to do science, right? And then when you graduated, where you couldn't take 4 hours to do a crown, right, or 5 hours to do an implant, right? You graduate, you come out, and you say, oh shit, I've got to talk to people. And there's this thing called I have to charge money. And then I have to deal with insurance. And I have to be an expert in the GP practice as well. And I now need to learn about marketing, and I need to understand social media. So you inherited a business mindset. How many people understand what I'm saying there? It's not your natural skill set, right? And worse, by the way, this is kind of, and please understand that I would die trying to do dentistry because I can't, right? It's not what I did. So, but when you're in the operatory and you're in the patient's mouth, right, with your loupes and sometimes your microscopes, that mouth is a whole big world to you. Yes? It's a huge world, right? And when you come out of the mouth, you look around you, the operatory is this big place that you get confused in. And some of you, by the way, if your instrument is here and it needed to be here, you say, what's wrong with you, right? And the assistant will say, just pick it up, pal, it's right here, right? And so, how many people understand what I'm saying? So we think everything in life should be that way, yeah? And then you come out of your operatory and there's like multiple operatories. And then you get to the front desk and then you get confused because that's where money is dealt with, right? And then the phones are ringing and you want them to answer the phone, but there's a patient waiting and then there's another patient in the reception area and you just sort of say, okay, I'm just going to go into my operatory, hide there because I feel safe there. How many people agree with what I just said, right? That's why it's so hard on the business side. When you get to a certain success, more success requires that you develop another skill set. So you're an accidental business owner, and by nature, you're entrepreneurial. What is it? What's the definition of an entrepreneurial person? They make things out of nothing, right? So you're going out into the world, and all of a sudden, you've got to be best friends with referring doctors so that they refer to you, and you've got to do your dentistry really well, and you've got to hire people, and you can hide as an associate to begin, but at some point, you're going to be responsible for more than just what you do in the mouth, right? And so an entrepreneurial person, they have these qualities. I'm going to tell you what the qualities are, and they can be taught. You don't have to go to a 2-year business degree. They can be taught. So the first thing the entrepreneurial person looks at is, what is the opportunity? What is the opportunity? So I have a referring doctor that has been in my sweet spot, in my inner community for 25 years. They then decide that they're bored and enter into an implant residency at a university in order to learn how to do implants. So they're going to do it the implant residency. Everybody understand the picture? You then say, oh shoot. First of all, they don't tell you why. They respect you. So oftentimes they won't tell you because they're afraid that you will have a judgment on them. And then you find out by accident and you say, I can't believe they're doing that to me. So you go through this little self-talk process, right? And then the entrepreneurial person says, okay, they're in it. How can I be their partner? Because they're not going to be able to do everything, even with the residency program. So I approach and say, hey, I'm excited you're in the residency program. Let me know how I can help. Let me know how I can help. Because I know that some of the stuff that you're sending me, after you get done with the residency program, you will be able to do. And there's other things that we'll have to work together on. But while you're through your residency program, if you have any help you need, you let me know. What did I just do? So what entrepreneurial people do is they get over themselves and then they look and see, what does this mean to me and how can I be helpful and how do I add value? Right? So they look at the opportunity and they see how big it is and then they amplify it. So what do is they say, okay, this referring doctor, they're really great referrals of mine. They send me so much, and we go to golf together, we play together, but I've never seen any full mouth rehabs from them, a full arch case. And I get implants, but I seem to get site-oriented implants, not reconstructive implants, right? So now, what does the entrepreneur say? What would happen if they sent me one a quarter? What would be its value? And then how do I multiply it by 10 years? So if I could increase the referrals by 20,000 a year, I would not look at it as 20,000 a year. I look at it as that's a $200,000 value. It's like those in trust. and I get to withdraw it by learning to work with them in an effective way, right? Because somebody's going to do those cases. Either it's not getting done, or it's getting done by someone else, right? And so what I want to do is move to a specialist that is going to be open to saying, what you can't do, I will do. And when you get into trouble, I'll be your partner. It's that simple, right? So that's what an entrepreneurial person does. And then once they've amplified it, they act. They have urgency to act. So what is the resource in the team? I couldn't do this without Martin. I couldn't do this without Amy. I certainly couldn't do this with a team that's out there that convinces people like you to be in this room. So if I'm going to be the best at what I do, the people around me also have to be the best. So a great entrepreneurial person says, who is going to worry for me about the referring doctors? Who's going to worry for me about referrals that come to me? Who's going to worry for me about getting a case accepted? Who's going to worry for me about getting it appointed correctly? So the entrepreneurial person basically says, what resources do I need and the team that I need to optimize and maximize my potential as a clinician? Because I'm the happiest when I'm in the mouth doing great dentistry. So what are the things I need to surround myself with? The instrumentation, the materials, the supplies, right? What do I need to be efficient? How can I sleep at night is what the entrepreneurial person says. Because if I have to do something again, it's going to be right? I can buy a low-value implant system, or I can buy the implant system that's going to allow me to sleep at night. So what am I, does the low-value one fail? Probably not. But it doesn't matter because I want to sleep at night, right? And it's going back to the restorative doctor. How do I set up the restorative doctor for success? Because if I don't include them in my treatment planning process, I'm not going to have a good outcome because I'm not them. And the patient's going to end up with them. So entrepreneurial people talk about the resources and the team that they need, and then they focus. And by the way, they're not afraid to fail, because failure isn't the failure of your goal, it's a failure of the strategy. So what can I do differently? So I'm not afraid to fail. I mean, failure is not, I'm afraid that I will not fail. Because if I'm not failing, that's a problem. Because then I'm not trying new things. How many people understood what I just said, right? Great that's happened in my life has of failure. Always has. So as you go through this implementation, you're going to have a little bit of failure. You're going to have a little bit of turmoil. And it takes a great leader to say, that's okay, I'm not challenging my vision or my goal. I'm just going to figure out how to do it differently. Does that make sense? What entrepreneurial people do. So it's about being persistent, creative, pragmatic, and reinventing yourself every 3 years. It's a 3-year cycle. What you're doing today will need to be different 3 years from now. And so the idea of entrepreneurial is to look at your referral base. So now I want you to really pay close attention to this. I want you to swap A with leading. Because no one is a B or a C. They're all A's to me. They're all A's to me. There's a great book called The Psychology of Success, I believe is what it's called. I'll get you the exact name a little bit later. And they did a whole study on this concept of ABC. So in the state of New York, the school that was at the bottom of the ratings of schools, where there were kids from broken homes and so on, they did a study, and no one in that class for a year, they weren't allowed to give anything but an A. So it was either an A or a not yet. Because studies showed when you labeled them as B, they became a B. When they got a C, they became a C. And these kids, nobody believed in them. So part of self-belief is, I'm going to believe in you. I just have to figure out how to get you to do the right thing for yourself. But I have to have a belief in you, because if I don't believe in you, my energy that I put in you is going to be limited. How many people get what I'm saying, right? So I want us to remove the label ABC. I'm going to use it just so that you can relate. I like it to call it leading. We like them, we know them, they know us. We get a lot of cases, we can kind of count on them. and the patients arrive properly referred and with value. Okay? Now, this definition is loose for some of, sometimes based on dollar value, sometimes it's based on the number of patients that you get from them and not necessarily dollar value. They may come prepared or not prepared, but they do arrive. Now, before I continue, I want you to all look at me. This is not, I just want to cover this. So, I'm a patient. And I come to your practice, so I drive there or I bus there, whatever I do, right? And then I wait in your reception area. And I know I'm at a specialist office. Everybody follow me? Right? So I arrive there, and you have no idea why I'm there. I have no idea why I'm there. My you need to see a specialist. You and the restorative doctor didn't communicate, but they were in your schedule. You could have called and visited or figured it out, but you didn't. So you look at the patient, and the first thing you say is, yeah, it's from that Dr. Manji. It's gonna be terrible, right? The patient, it's a complete waste of time. And I'm gonna tell you, right, that is the greatest gift that you just received. I came to your door, people. I actually showed up for an appointment. I may have nothing. I may not even know why I'm there. What an unbelievable opportunity for me to give you a great patient experience and partner with you and really communicate with you what it is I see, because there is no baseline. I wasn't given one. And yet we have an attitude about those people. I love, give me all of those people. I'll take them all day long. How many people heard what I just said? Remember, you didn't drag me here. I got there on my own. Maybe I came in with the mindset that you will accept my plan because the dentist has a plan. Maybe I came in with the mindset that it's not going to cost me very much money, but it's going to cost me a car. It really doesn't matter. I arrived. And how many would agree with this second statement? People with money are a pain, and people that don't have money, they seem to do the dentistry. Who agrees with that statement? And then the ones that are emerging, new grads, people that are just getting their teeth sunk in, or new people that move to the area, etc. And so we look at them like this, right? So it's like, you know, our numbers are the lowest on the top, number of dentists, and then in the middle are the core, and then there's a wider group that don't refer to me that are emerging, right? So that's how we look at your practice. That's how you look at your practice today. Yes or no? Roughly true, right? This is how we look at it. If you look at it, right? Where is the greatest opportunity? Where is the greatest opportunity if I was a specialist? Is it in the A? Is it in the leading, right? Is it in the emerging? And then this is the more important question. Where is your greatest risk? Where's your greatest risk? Travis, where's the greatest risk? Listen, I paid a lot of money for those mics, so here's how they work. You turn them on, and then you speak to me in the mic, so I don't have to repeat.
Well, you could say that the leading has a lot of risk, because if you don't nurture those relationships and keep that consistency going, then you lose a lot of value.
Travis, that's 1,000% right. You could not say it, that's what you say, right? Because if I'm in the leading, I'm probably sending you $200,000-300,000 worth of dentistry. Sometimes I'm going to look at that and say, that's a lot of referrals that I'm putting out, and maybe I should bring in a traveling specialist. That's also a practice if I was in a corporate environment, what would I look at that and say, I can keep that in-house and keep it profitable for myself. Does that make sense? So that's my highest risk. Now, Trevor, you got to turn it off because other people won't be able to get on. I'm going to teach you. Don't worry, buddy. I'm going to look after you. You're coachable. So I'm always thinking about those two questions. Where is my greatest opportunity? Where is my greatest risk? And so what I want you to write down is, as an entrepreneurial person, I want to minimize my risks. What I saw wrong with our study club system was it was designed to be 10 or 12 people, which is really good, right? Because it's small group learning. But I need 2 or 3 of those in place. because I want to be broad-based. And the minimum number that I need to have a successful practice, and the numbers that I'm going to show, I'm just going to give you those numbers and I'll show you why, is a minimum of 20 in my inner community, in my study club system. But I can't do more than 12 per club, so the number is 24. And the reason it's 24, 2 clubs of 12 each, because there's always going to be 2 or 3 people that aren't going to refer to me. That's okay. Life isn't 100%, all right? But if I engage correctly, the rest will occur. And so what I want to do is have a broad-based relationship. So if I lose 1 or 2, it makes no difference to me because I have a broad-based referral base. I'm going to have to work a little bit harder to get other people to take a place. But if I lose somebody that is sending me $200,000 worth, and I've got others that are at 20, I got to have 10 of those, the 200,000. That's a very bad risk, right? As an investor, if I was you're wearing 3 hats, right? You're an investor of your practice, right? You would never invest in your practice. You'd never say, I should buy this practice. Because your risk is the 4 or 5 or 6 people that are in the top, that if any change occurs there, it has a dramatic impact on what? Your net, right? Because you're already breaking even. You're already breaking even. So what an entrepreneurial person says, what is the right framework? How do I think about it? And so when I started looking at this, and I've been working with specialists about 20 years of those 30 years, in the last 10 years, intimately around the study club framework, and then 4 or 5 years ago, I woke up one morning and said, this is wrong. I feel we're not helping. There are no study club leaders, they're specialists with practices. And so I started a study club of my own with specialists in it. And restorative doctors, by the way, in the first year. And I found that they weren't talking to each other or they wouldn't tell the truth. Like I would get like these side conversations, I can't tell you this in front of the GPs, but here's what I think. And then the GPs, I can't tell you in front of the specialists, but here's what. So I basically said, okay, I'm going to have a restorative study club, and then I'm going to have a specialist study club. So I now have 4 study clubs. And I've been doing it now for several years, and I really went to task, and I can promise you that in the last 2 years, if you follow this, in the last 2 years, we've had 90+% success with this process. So this is the right framework. The inner community, where there's intentional focus. The inner community is a member of the study club. So when people say, who should I have in the study club? I say to them, how many doctors are referring to you? And they'll tell me 100. I'll say, invite all 100. 30 might show up at the organizational meeting, and 20 might say yes, but they've now self-selected. To be too complicated about it. And I say, that's dumb, right? Because I don't know who's going to say yes. And what we do is we censor. We say, well, I don't want that A guy in there because but that A guy, that leading guy may not want to come there. He'll say, leave me alone, I'll just keep sending to you. Let's go to lunch once in a while, right? So that doesn't make them not a great inner person. They need to be in my inner community in another way so I don't lose touch with them and otherwise I take them for granted. So think about what I'm saying, that the inner community, if they're in my study club, I'm meeting them 8 times a year. I'm discussing cases with them 8 times a year. I can have my PRD, my professional relationship director, go into their practice and help them with clinical education because they have SPEAR online, help them with case acceptance because they have SPEAR online. I can have my PRD go in when a patient is appointed and I don't have the information, go visit the practice and say, your patient is arriving. Is there anything you need us to know? Right? So there's so much I can do when I'm in front of them 8 times a year. And my PRD is in their practice 16 times a year. Right? And with those inner community, by the way, we just announced this as part of our master's program, we now have a hygiene study club. So your PRD for your inner community is able to invite the hygienist to a hygiene study club. And what do you think hygienists do? That's where all the cases are. How many people agree with that statement, by the way, right? And so periodontist said, hallelujah, that's what I want. All surgeons said, but I'm not a periodontist. So we created the study club modules around hygiene. So there's 4 modules. You do 4 meetings a year, and all the hygienists get together, and you, as the clinician, get to be in front of them for 10 minutes, welcome them, let the module do its thing. Your PR professional is directing it, and you come at the end. We just put it out to our beta group this month, and it will be massively released in July for the masses. So in the inner community, I want a relationship with them through Spear Online or Study Club. So if I have my leading, I'm going to try and get them into Spear Online because that's how I can communicate with them on the patient engagement tool. If they are referring to me, but they haven't, I'm trying to nurture them, I'm going to use a different approach. They're not part of my inner community, but I want to stay connected to them. So there is a strategy for inner. Inner is who I'm nurturing and growing and supporting in a very aligned way. Outer, I'm staying in touch with them, and we're going to give you exact strategies later as we go through the day. And then outreach is where I want to keep my name alive. So if outreach has, say, 100 doctors in it, how do I keep my name in front of all 100 doctors? Because here's what's going to happen, by the way. If I give them meaningful information, if I put out a really good clinical newsletter to them every other month, one day they will say, I can't get my patient in for 8 weeks. Maybe I should give these guys a try. They seem to be good. And I just need that door opened once. Right? So as soon as the first referral comes in, what do? My PRD goes out to visit them. Thank you for the referral. Your patient is arriving. How can we support you? Here's my referral kit. What do I need to know about the patient? What do I need to know about your practice? What's the next step for the patient? How many people are getting what I'm doing now, right? So outreach is keep my brand alive so that over time I nudge, I call it the nudge. Our strategy is TAP. So outreach is I'm just tapping them with meaningful information. And then outer community, I'm visiting them, right? I might visit them quarterly because they do refer to me. I might visit them monthly. It depends on the person. And then is where I'm with, they have Spear Online in common, they're part of the study club, or they're with Spear Online, and I'm connected to them through clinical alignment, through clinical philosophies and clinical alignment. So that's the framework that I want to work with. So I'm always making sure my brand is alive, I'm connected to people that are referring to me so that I can move them further and closer to me, and I'm in front of the people that I'm growing with 8 times a year. Right? But I want to be the receptionist's best friend, and I want to be the hygienist's best friend, and I want to be the clinical assistant's best friend. And so that whole thing in the inner is this tight connection. And so it's the other way around. I need to make sure my brand is awesome. I want to be with as many people as I can be in the outer community, and I want to expand my inner from 7 or 8 representing 70, 80% of my revenue to 24 to 30 representing 70% of my revenue. Right? And that's my 3-year plan. Everybody with me? Right? So the right level of engagement for each community. And so why is the inner community important? For whatever reason, they're enticed to work with you. They've chosen to grow with you. They identify themselves. Right? They're invested in their growth. And so what we've done with this new app, we work with a lot of specialists and with a lot of restorative doctors, but more importantly, by the way, we work with patients. So we've hired a company to put patients of different profiles, different age groups, different social demographics, and we did 3 different studies on it, and we would ask the patient questions about dentistry, and then we would show them different images, and we would then track to see how many were interested in going further. So, and then we figured out what they wanted to learn. And here's what they want to learn. What is my condition, and what will happen if I don't do anything about it? I want you to just let me repeat. What is my condition, and what will happen if I don't do anything about it? Okay, so this is Imtiaz, right? And I have access to the world's best dentists. And so I'm now going to my hygiene, and I'm brushing and I'm flossing, and there's a lot of stuff getting stuck in my in my teeth. So I figured, okay, I had done my mouth about 18, 20 years ago. It's time to redo it. So I had Darren do it. And I have to tell you, I just finished. I was in a chair, and if anybody knows anything about me, I can't sit still for more than 10 minutes, right? So I'm in the chair all day Monday, this week, all day Tuesday, and then Wednesday morning was doing my bite, my occlusion. And I still have provisionals in me, and we just did, on the first day we did the 2 quadrants on the upper, the second day we did the 2 quadrants on the bottom, and then we did bite adjustments and took a million pictures along the way. The appointment is to an endodontist and a periodontist because I've got a side issue and some endo that's a concern, and then my interior work. As I'm sitting there, I'm thinking about what patients go through, right? And I'm thinking about Darren and what he's going through because I'm kind of, and I have to tell you, when he showed me what was going on in my mouth, I had a missing tooth, empties, had a missing tooth, and the teeth had caved in. So now the implant was not going to be that easy because I didn't want to do ortho. And so the treatment plan became more complex as a result, right? And so if I had known, if my dentist 20, 25 years ago had said to me, look, you better get that replaced because 20 years from now, here's what your mouth will look like. What do you think I'd do? I would have done it, right? This is me this week, right? And so I have a whole new passion for the patient engagement tool. There's about 84, 85 different conditions in a patient's mouth. And the restorative doctor is able to take the tablet, as are you, because this is all included with the study club membership. It's included with the master's program for you guys if you continue to go forward with us. You can show the patient, you can draw on it, you can write on it, you can communicate that, send it to the restorative doctor if that's what you choose to do, or the restorative doctor back to you. If they want to discuss it with their spouse, they can do it on their spouse. This can be without our brand on your site. Right? There's been about 10 million views in the 2 months that we launched this. Right? So that they're invested in their growth because now we have this app in common. We can communicate back and forth. And then they allow the team to engage with our team. Because if I say, hey, I've got a lunch and learn for you around how to deal with insurance, and my PRD will come in and we'll learn together. Because they have access to Sphere Online, so do we, but they don't engage in it like you would. So we actually certify the professional relationship director on all the content that's online, so they can sit with the restorative doctor and say, I know you're having trouble with financial arrangements, let's learn. Right? So it's team to team, it's doctor to doctor. That's why the inner community is so important. And as you do that, by the way, these are Manji studies, and so they're approximate. And I know you guys are into science and evidence, but I'm always approximately right. We've already established that, right? How many of you would agree 1/3 of the referrals come through the front desk? They have nothing to do with what the doctor said. How many agree with it? Put your hand up for me, right? Because there's a lot of staff here. You got to work with me now, okay? Otherwise, lunch will be a long time. And so, and then, by the way, 1/3 of the patients never call. Because unless I am in urgency, I give you a card, call and make an appointment. That card sits in my pocket. It goes to the dry cleaners because life happens. And then I show up again at the next hygiene appointment and I say it again. How many understand that, by the way? Only 1/3 actually will go to you because the restorative doctors say you must go there. That's a fact, right? So I want to close the loop. If all I did was teach the restorative doctor team to work with me, to appoint with me, I win. If I get the hygienist to work with me, I win. When I get the doctor aligned, I win. And so that's the reason of the inner community. That's what we were missing in the study club system, right? So we needed a way to go, because what you do is, how many of you would, you have a great meeting, you talk to each other clinically, there's no staff there, back to my office, my life takes over, the team didn't feel that energy. No wonder they don't refer, right? So yes, they would refer, but not at the level when the team's connected. So that's the loop that we closed. I always say if I was a specialist, I want to be in their office without being there. So anytime a patient is thinking anything about a specialist, they come to my office. So what would that be, right? And so there's tons and tons of improvement. Here is Greg Adams, and I'll tell you this story, by the way. His wife was with him, and this is his third year in the master's program. In the first year, I was really concerned because Greg said they didn't send a word. I had to go check if he had a pulse. I was concerned that he was in the wrong class. I would say this if he was in this room, by the way, and I'm being recorded, so he probably will see it. But he was taking it all in. And by the third year, this year, from the time he joined, he's grown 45%. He leads 2 clubs, and by the way, in his I won't tell you his age, but he's kind of around me, and I'm 62. So he leads 2 study clubs. The team partnership, the guy said to me, I was thinking of retirement, but I can't even think that anymore. I'm having so much fun. And he's working 20% less, and has grown 45%. Okay? So imagine a world where your referrals respect you enough as a clinical and business partner to be in a trusted partnership with you, where you sit down at the beginning of each year and say, what do we want to grow in as clinicians? What study club modules do we want to pick? How do I want to develop my team in my practice? How do I want to work on my case acceptance in my practice? When you can set time and energy together and work in harmony. And by the way, the professional relations director does not need to be an expert in the practice because Spear is with her. Why? Because everything we need, there's almost 80, 90 lunch and learns online. Right? And with this hygiene study club, and we've tested it, the impact has been, I will show you some stories there, it's been incredible. So the members of my board, by the way, they all grow much more than 20%, but they are my guinea pigs. That's kind of where we make sure it works before I bring it to the workshops. So, and I'll tell you about them a little bit later, because every year I fire them and hire new and get new people aboard. I don't hire you. I don't pay you. You don't pay me. You just come but you're required to engage, and I'll tell you more about it later. So we're going to be picking our 2020 advisory board in about September. So Entrepreneurial is about, let's go to the handout now, who we are now versus who we want to grow to become. So let's go to the book and take just 5 minutes and think about Entrepreneurial. And we should be on page, and here the questions are really quite simple. We should be on page 1-16, right? So the questions there are, before we go to the questions, let's go to the diagram where we talk about what is the opportunity. And the opportunity for me would be, I want 40 broad-based, if I was 3 years from now, 4 years, I want 40 broad-based referring doctors representing 70 to 80% of my revenue. So that there's no one doctor that I would miss if something happened. Everybody with me? Right? I want to amplify our partnership so as they see my value and I've earned a seat at the table. And then I want the urgency to act so that when they come to a meeting with me, in the next week or two, my PRD is out there visiting and creating the energy and the action. And I want to be very focused. So what an entrepreneurial does, if you look at the other circles, they set meaningful goals. They set meaningful goals. Right? If I was a periodontist or an oral surgeon or an endodontist, every other week, I would take one day where I finish at 3, get organized for whatever I'm going to do at 4, and then from 4 to 6 or 4 to 7, I'm going to be with a group of dentists every other week for 40 weeks of the year. There is a small price for me to pay because it's organized, structured. I don't have to prep for it. I've got a person that's organizing it, right? And so set meaningful goals And goals go beyond just revenue goals. How many referring doctors do I want? How many cases should they refer? What are the case types they should? I want to get specific. I want to commit my time and resource to it and delegate as much as I can through the resources. And then I want to commit to execution. So I want to be in a true partnership. Now I'll tell you something. When I arrive to teach this, I don't have to worry about your name tags and your badges, where you're seated, right? The binders are done. The sitting chart is in place. They've summarized each of you for me. I review it. Yesterday, I spent an hour reviewing it with the team. I then focus in on areas that I want to think about, and then I come in and I'm ready. If I had to worry about all that detail, I couldn't do this. So I want you to write this down. Right? And this is for the honor doctors that are here. I hire people to worry for me. All right? Do I have the right structure in place? Because I don't want to be a slave to my business. I don't live to work. I don't work to live. I have that balance. Right? I have that balance. So when you go to your questions, right? Let's go to your questions now. What is your human capital for entrepreneurial energy? So before you answer that, I want you to look up. How many of you agree that the success of your practice, 70, 80, 90% of your success depends on your referring doctors? Yes or no? Yes or no? True or false? Everybody come with me. Sorry? False. Why?
As you mentioned, you may allude to it later in the presentation, but it is my belief that what we're staring at in the future is not necessarily being dependent on the referrals, but being dependent on the self-referred patients.
Very good. Now, let me ask you another question.
Sure.
What percentage of your revenue today is from your referral?
Say, if we take it just with my practice, I'm not sure anybody else in the room, but it's about 50-50.
Okay. So let me ask you another question. If the 50% that I referred to you by a referring doctor stopped, what would happen to your practice?
No, it would definitely not.
You'd lose money. Let me help you out.
Lose money.
Yeah.
Right.
So my point is, I have to be focused. Remember what I said, 50% of my referrals have to come from patients and 50% from the referring doctors. You're blessed that you're already there. So your goal will be to raise both bars. So if I am today at $1 million and it's $500,000 from referrals and $500,000 from patients, I'm just making these numbers up, 1.5 million, 750, right? So most of us, we think about our referring doctors in the hallway, at lunch, and after hours. And we get these texts that we cringe because now we have to return the text and return the call. Yes or no? Right? Think about what I'm saying, right? So I want, in my human capital, I always want one person on my team that the GP practice, restorative practice, has got enough confidence in that they can call. So if it's about sending a patient, they know they need to talk to my PRD if the normal systems aren't working, rather than coming to me. And if it's about a case, they can talk to my treatment coordinator. And if I can have that in place, where one person is worrying about making sure the relationship is tight, and the other person making sure it's getting accepted, and I delegate to the rest of the team in the right way, I've got a great practice. So what I'm talking about here is you answering the question, do I have the right entrepreneurial energy in my practice? Right? So that's the first question. What is your human capital? Do you have the team to do what you need to be able to do? And then are you comfortable setting goals that stretch you? Right? Because some people they set goals that they know they can meet because it makes you feel better. But I don't set goals to meet, I want goals to stretch me. Right? Because if I set a goal to meet, that's not a goal. That's just going to happen. Right? And then what is the value of one referring doctor? What is the value of one referring doctor? Because for me to have this invitation practice from patients, I've got to have the referring doctors refer to me, but when the patient comes in, the patient says, this is my specialist. And the referring doctor says, this is the specialist. And with both things go, then the tides rise from both sides, and I'm able to refer back patients to my referring doctors. Because patients are seeking me out, but I got that way because my referring doctors were good to me. So I always want to be respectful of my referring doctor. I don't want to upset them in any way. I want to make sure that my systems are in place where when patients come to me direct, I find out who their referring doctor is, how they found out about me, is there a direct connection to a referring doctor, and I make sure that they go back to that person. Does it make sense? Because otherwise, I'm going to compromise one versus the other, right? So 1 + 1 should make 100, not I do well here and then I do poorly here. So I have to be respectful. So just take 5 minutes to think about that either by yourself. Do you have the resources? Do you have the right team in place? And I'm just going to give you the answer in a thriving specialist practice. I need a treatment coordinator for the patient experience, and put my invitation systems in place, and need a professional relationship director for my referring doctor relationships and their teams to energize that. Those are the two roles that I need, and then of course the rest of the team that supports that energy. This next part is my favorite part, because we're going to go through discussing quality growth. Now, here is a hint, by the way. You want to answer this question. How much of your time, when you're not in the mouth, are you thinking about the referring practices and working with them? Is that an hour a day? Is that an hour a week? Always think about. Now, when you think about case acceptance, and who's you measuring it, how good are you at consumer financing? Because that's going to tell you whether you have the resources. Right? Now, don't worry about how we're going to come to that. But if you have, because I know how Romina is thinking about it, how will I come back? We'll come to that. It's a nice name, by the way, Romina.
I agree with him.
Yeah. You'll see.
Challenges with so many personalities and so much things.
So in the entrepreneurial side, I'm encouraging you to be a clinician and an owner. So now we're going to go to the third part, the third principle, which is quality growth. Here is what I'm going to tell you, right? When I understood this, and it took me a lot of years in business to understand this, I was always marveled at how some people got so much more done than I did. And I would ask myself the question, why? Why is it that way? Right? And so, because they have the same 24 hours that I do. And I seem to be working 14 hours, and they seem to be doing 10. And they're most successful. So what is it that they're doing that I need to understand? And then the light bulb went on for me, and that is that we're born, we can't make more than 20. And so what equalizes us is we all have 24 hours. What differentiates us is the value of our time. I already told you that earlier. And I learned that lesson years ago. We bought our first house. We were in an apartment and then to a townhome, and then we bought our first house, and I'm excited. There's a yard in the front, yard in the back, Colleen was just born, and I said, okay, I've got to cut grass. So I go out to the Home Hardware Depot store. I buy the, and the weed killers and all that stuff. I was equipped with, gloves. I mean, I was hip. I had all the crap, right? And I go out there. The first time I cut it, I just was so bad at it that there was a lot of patches left with where I wasn't even. And it took me like 4 hours in the yard, and I was embarrassed at my cut. And I was hoping the grass, and in Vancouver it rains a lot, so the grass grew fast. So a week after that, I raised this thing, and I go out there again, and I'm watching this kid that's like 12 years old, my neighbor, and he's just whistling, walking up and down, finished in 20 minutes. Their yard is bigger than mine. I'm out there 4 hours. And the time after that, I thought, So I go over to the kid and I said, hey, would you like a job? And he said, what? I said, I'd like you to cut my grass back in front. He said, sure. He's excited. I said, so what would you charge me? I'll tell you, I was embarrassed. He said, I'll charge you $4. Now, it was 30 years ago, so it was $4 was handsome back then. So I said, I'll tell you what, I'll pay you $5. Right? But we've got to talk to your dad to get permission. So I talked to the dad. They said, absolutely, have him. And he said, you shouldn't. You're a neighbor. You don't pay him. I said, no, I've got to pay him. And he said, how much are you going to pay him? He said, $5. And he looks at his son and he says, okay, that amount of money goes into savings. This is right in front of me, by the way. Or I'll reduce your pocket money by $5. So, and then the kid says, well, that's not fair. What can I buy with the $5? Well, you can buy something at the end of the year. So it was kind of a good deal. He comes over, he looks at my equipment, he says, would you mind if I use my own stuff? And I said, sure. And the kid's done in an hour what took me 4 hours to do. I did the math in my head, right? At the time I was making about $25 an hour when I did my math. The kid I paid $5, so I did $100 worth of work, and I paid him $5 to do what I did for $1. And the first, I have this disease that only I can do what I do. Right? We began to grow when I came out of my own way. You specialists will grow when you get out of your own way. How many of you specialists agree with what I'm just saying, by the way, right? Because we want to control everything. We want to be in total control, and you can't be. You want to be controlled in the operatory. So when I have the right team around me, where they know how to schedule me, they know how to interact with patients, they know how to interact with my referring doctors, I'm going to do well. So quality growth is basically saying, if the practice was organized with the right people doing the right jobs, what can I do for the day? Right? So that's the first question that you have to ask yourself. And so it's the right value comprehensively. Because here's what I know about every patient. They have to be welcomed. We have to communicate with them. They have to understand why they're there and why they were referred. So we have to communicate with them as a person. So we get to know them, why they were, what motivated them to come, what do they understand about the visit, all that good stuff. So that's communications needed. Then I need to take records of some kind, right? And then I have to be able to show them what it is that I see, and then I've got to be, and then I can be a clinician. Because until all that happens, I can't be the clinician, right? I only get to be a clinician after I get the records. And so then I do my clinical part, and I tell them what it is that I see, and then somebody has to talk to them about appointments and money, right? And then somebody has to communicate with the referring doctor appropriately when it's needed, and I've got to do some kind of a letter, right? So there's what I call treatment coordinator time, specialist time, treatment coordinator time. What does the treatment coordinator do in her time? What does that energy look like? And then what do I do when I'm in the room? So when the treatment coordinator comes out and says, look, they're a little nervous. They came thinking they only needed one implant. They thought we were going to accept their insurance. They're a little nervous. I want you to be just cool. Look at the records, communicate to them what they need, and then leave, and I'll take care of the rest. And then I come in and I say, so Mr. Maji is here. He was sent by Dr. Smith, and they thought they were coming for an implant, but I see there's more going on, but I don't know. I've taken the records that you'd asked me to take. In some cases, I'll prescribe the records after I say hello, but whichever way you do it. And so I give the doctor, the specialist, a summary right in front of the patient. Why? Because I don't want the specialist to ask the same questions again and the patient feeling like, why are they asking twice when they talk to each other? The second thing is the patient then hears what I said and they say, these guys understand. They've got me. The doctor gets me because they've heard me. Right? The treatment coordinator has, if it's an implant, going through all the patient videos that we have, engagement videos. By the way, we also have created home care videos. So now home care doesn't have to be prescribed. You just basically, you give it to them on a video. It's linked on their text or their email, and it's brilliant, by the way. We've got, I think, 4 or 5 home care, and more are coming out. So it's really fantastic. I just love the home care idea. And then so I then do my part. I talk, because by that time I know they know what an implant is, that what happens if you don't fill all that stuff is done by the treatment coordinator. She says, I showed the patient's videos on this, and this. I say, okay, thank you. Let me now look at the records. But do you have any questions on what Mary just said to me? Do we have everything understood? And then I might ask 1 or 2 health questions just to make sure that I establish a little bit of rapport. And then I look at the records. I communicate what I see first to the patient. And then I repeat it to my treatment coordinator, say, now here's what I want you to do next. And then I say, if you have any questions for me, call me back in, and I leave. And I never call my consult room, because consult means they're going to sell me something. I call it my exam room. Even if it's a consult room. It's my exam room. And in the exam room is everything that I need to do communications. The models, my before and afters, if that's what I need, all my certificates to show off the kind of dentist I am, any cases I've done that I want to show on an iPad, it's all there, right? In that environment, how successful can I be? When I know that when I walk in, the patient is ready for me, and when I walk out, it will be handled for me. And then when I walk out, the fundamental communication will be done right away. Just saw your patient today. Here's what we've communicated. A clinical report will come out to you in the next 2 days. Thank you for sending MTS to us. When we're done, we will appoint MTS back to you. That goes out right away. When the patient leaves, the treatment coordinator is not done till that friendly letter goes out. It's just a letter that says, we saw them, we're going to look after them, they've appointed. When we're done, we'll appoint them back to you. The clinical letter can come a day or 2 later if that's what I choose to do. We even have people that have masterminded paragraphs around the clinical letter. So the simple ones just go out by the treatment coordinator. I just look at it, make a minor edit, and then it goes out. So 70-80% of communication is pretty standard. The 20-30 that I need to do, I will do. And so I minimize the work that I do, and I let the right people do the right jobs. Right? So now I do, let's say it's an implant, I do the implant. And now in my practice, when they first begin, I might be giving them everything they need to do to restore the case. So my PRD goes out and says, we saw MTS, we've appointed him back to you in 2 weeks. Here is your kit. I don't mail it to them. Here's your kit to make it easy for you. Let me show you how this works together. And I do it with the doctor or with the assistant, whoever I work with. And now the PRD goes in there. If the patient is real for the first time, the PRD goes out and says, we just got your patient. This is what you say to us. What more do we need to learn about you? So that whole thing is so tight because the right people are doing the right jobs. Everybody with me? So that's how I increase the value of my time, right? So what's my top line clarity and what's my vision? So in a day, I want to be able to do, and I'm going to show you the schedule tomorrow. I think it's tomorrow. Or Saturday morning, I can't remember right now. I want at least in an average, in a great specialist practice, if I schedule it correctly, my treatment coordinator can see up to 8 patients a day new. And we'll show you the template to that, right? Some days will be 6 because the consult may be a longer consult. But we create a template around it so when a new patient calls, we know how to appoint them and how much doctor time is needed, right? And so my top line clarity is what? I want to do X in revenue. To do X in revenue, I need Y new patients. And Y new patients are in the template. And so as long as I follow the template, my activity has to drive the new patient activity to fit into that template. And then I know that every day I'm going to do maybe every Wednesday morning is going to be when I do my full mouth, my upper arch and lower arch. So it's programmed that way. And until 2 weeks come by, I don't give it up. At the 2-week mark, I then let anything go in, but it's programmed, right? And so I have top line clarity at the vision level. I know the key drivers. What are the case types I need? What are the case values I need? Where do those case values go in, right? And then I track it. I've got to track it because anything I track works. If I don't track it, it's a coincidence. How many people get what I'm saying, right? If I didn't have that thing in the car called the dashboard, which tells me when the gas is running low, I'm not tracking it, what will happen to my gas? I'm always going to guess when I need to fill it up. Right, and if you're Romina, she kind of might just fill it up every third day just to make sure she doesn't, that's what you would do. I would kind of wait till the last moment when, the car doesn't feel good, I better go fill it up with gas, right? So there's different people, right? If I see a yellow light, what am I going to do? I'm going to speed up, right? Some of you will say, slow down. But I don't think about it. I'm in autopilot. I want to be in autopilot with the right behavior, right? So what are the key, and then I want to track. I want to track. Anything you track will work. Why? Because you're tracking it. And if it's not working the way you want it to work, you think about, how do I do it differently? Right? So it's individual effects in a success equation, and all growth is not equal. I want to repeat myself. All growth is not equal. I don't want a bunch of new patients coming in and only get 60% case acceptance. Right? Why? I see a lot of new patients, and that's a lot of my time, my treatment coordinator's time. So how do I increase my case acceptance to 85 and 90%? 2 things go into it. How they're referred to me and how I treat them. So if I can increase the value of how they're referred to me, my case acceptance goes up at least 10%. And then how I treat them when they're there and making financial arrangements. And so not all growth is equal. So if I just keep throwing new patients at you and your case acceptance remains at 60%, you're not going to be as productive. I'd rather give you fewer new patients and increase your case. Everybody get me? Otherwise, you got a lot of noise going on, right? And so the idea here is you're informed but not anchored in the past. And it is simple math. I want you to pay attention to that simple math column, right? This is where I want you to be, in that simple math. So the number one thing it says is number of consults, right? So the number of consults is what allows me to do what? To be able to work on cases completed, right? So if I track number of consults, what the average case value is, and cases completed, in order to complete a case, that people have to say yes. In order for my average value to go up, I need to get not just a site, I need to get that mix, right? And so if all I did was improve my consults by 10%, my average case value by 10%, and my cases completed by 10%, so each into 10%, I grow 33%. So if I'm getting say 1,000 referrals a year for the sake of this discussion, if I improve my referrals by just 100, and then I improve my average case value, say it was 2,000 by just 10%, and then I improve cases completed just by 10%, I grow 33%. Right? I've always said, by the way, God gave me 2 hands, right? If I have to count more than 5, I get very confused because one always has a pen or a clicker. I can only count till 5, and I'm always wearing shoes, so I can't go to my toes to count. And any more than 5, and I just can't keep up. Right? So I want to keep it simple and be the world's best. You have no idea how many opportunities that come to my desk as an entrepreneurial person to get involved with business, other businesses, even in dentistry. I've always said no because I'm very clear, this is my skill set, this is what I do, and when I go outside of it, I dilute myself and I'm not as successful, right? So growth goals is pure. And I'm going to give you the 5 exact goals to set, and we'll give you the science behind setting those goals, right? And then that's what you focus on. So vision for your future is not more time. I want to be very clear about that, right? I want to delegate, I want to do what I'm best at, and have people around me doing what they're best at. And it isn't about the top line, it's about the net. How many people got what I just said? I want to really make sure. Revenue doesn't impress me. What I take home impresses me. And what I take home doesn't impress me. How much time do I have in my life? Right now, it's all about Liam. Right? And so how can I be more effective? Because being successful is not an option for me. And success doesn't mean success in my professional life. Success is professional and personal. And how do I keep staff? We're in an unemployment area of 4% right now, right? Great staff is hard to find. I keep them by being successful because I can then incent them in the right way, on the right factors, and engage them in the right way where they wouldn't even dream about going to work elsewhere. The people that work for me either have to be sold or they have to die, right? They're going to just keep working for me. It's a fact, right? Right? So I say to Amy when she went, I said, Amy, here's the good news and the bad news, right? The good news is you're going to work for me. The bad news is you're going to work awfully hard. And the worst news is you can never quit, right? And so let me tell you what that means. That means I've got your back. When you fail, I fail. When you're in pain, I'm in pain. When I'm in pain, you're in pain. When I fail, you fail. Let's understand how we can help each other, right? Same thing with everyone that's around me. Everyone that's around me, you know. And so the idea, I've got people that are working for me for 30 years to this day. Okay? So understand the 3 key drivers and you drive them. So here is a success story. Dr. Reed just joined our advisory board. They're a partnership. That's their PRD on the right. He was doing $11,000 a day. He's an oral surgeon. And he basically said, I'll be happy at 12.5. So he created this template. And I said, okay, let's do 12.5, but do your template at 15. Because then you'll do 12.5. What do you think he does? Does 15. Why? Because that's what his template told him to do, right? And so he's established his inner community. He's got 26 doctors in his study club system. He put the PRD in place. He executed strategies in the inner and outer community. He's up 34% in referrals and 25% in revenue. But by the way, both of them, each. So not of them combined 25%, 21%, by the way. This is each of the surgeons. And now they've just added a second PRD, and they're looking for an associate to create a partnership. So their plan is we're going to go 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. By the way, they were doing maybe 1 full large case, maybe a month. They're doing 1 a week with a wait list. So now they're adding a second one each, right? And they're out of Naples, by the way. And they have 2 locations, and so they're location bound, right? Because when one is here, one's there, and so they don't have enough chairs. So they're expanding, bringing in an associate, creating a partnership. There'll be a third, and then they will bring in the 4th person, and these 2 will go down to a third. They never want to retire, so they will work 50% each and just cover for each other. So it won't be like you work, 2.5 days, I'll work 2.5. One might work for 2 months to cover, and the other will be 2 months on a boat somewhere, and vice versa, because they've matured enough where their referring sources don't care who sees their patient as long as it's one of them. So that's their next vision. All right, it's a beautiful vision. All right. Really, really excited. By the way, each of you that continues with the master's program, if you continue with it, we have an execution award. An execution award is you get me to come to your practice. So I come in and spend a half a day with you and your team. And then I do a half a day lecture for your referring doctors. Right? And so they won the execution award. And I promise you, it has nothing to do with the fact they're in Naples. They're the oral surgeon that won it. But everybody wins, because when you engage, and we have a matrix, by the way, how many inter-community members do you have? Did the referrals increase? Did your revenue increase? Are you meeting your template? Have you innovated new strategies? There's a whole approach to it. We'll be giving you that for the class of 2019. Can we announce it in January of 2020? Here's the other winner. Resounding success. I cannot believe this young lady's success. Lisa Till is her name. She put her template in place right away, and she just looked at me and said, how confident are you if I do 3 study clubs? Because I have a little kid at home and a husband that's an endodontist, and I'm the driver. How confident are you if I give up this time? I said, 100%. You just do it. So she won the execution award, 38 doctors, PRD, executed the strategies, 41% increase in referrals and 39% in revenue. Is now added an associate because they can't keep up. So she is in Cleveland, which is the last place I want to go to, I told her. And she's a periodontist. She won the periodontal award, right? So I promise you it has nothing to do with location, but please win if you're a part of California or somewhere close by, so I don't have to travel a long distance. I know you're pointing at them. I don't know where they are. North Carolina. Well, that's Raleigh. That's kind of nice, yeah. But because you guys went there, I think I'll put $100 that they'll win, but we'll see. So that's their award. I'm going to both practices in the fall. The reason I do this, by the way, so we have our advisory board that's 18 specialists, and then we have a PRD advisory board of 18 PRDs, and we learn from them what we need to do, and then I go visit 8 practices during the year, and then I'll go deeply, intimately into the people that won the execution award. And that's how we keep our knowledge current. Martin talks to every single specialty that gets into the master's program. He does your plan for you and with you. So there's not anything he hasn't heard. So he has this incredible knowledge base. And then Amy has this incredible knowledge base because she innovates all of our strategies and works with the PRDs to make sure they are executed, and then once in a while has to slap the doctors around to kind of conform with Martin. Then we have the study club advisors that drive, so there's a whole group of people. We have PRD coaches, and Martin's going to introduce you to all of them in a minute. So the value growth is really driving a quality life both inside the practice and outside the practice. Lisa, what I love about her success, she called and she cried, and she said, I couldn't see myself being able to be a great mother. But my growth has been so outstanding, I now have an associate, and I took an extra half a day off, and I'm loving it. All right? That part was successful to me. That part was success to me, right? Because she's got a young child, and that part was successful to me. And so, by the way, the endodontist is the husband, and he's practice crew because he's part of the master's program as well. And I won't even tell you his numbers, but Lisa beat him by miles, and he's kind of a little bit arrogant. And so I'm being recorded, so I would tell him in his face, I said, buddy, you know, it's a good thing you're married to Lisa. So driving quality life inside and outside the practice is the answer. So it comes down to these factors. Daily value. I don't meet my goal at the end of the year. I meet my goal every day. The end of the year is stringing those days together. And I'm willing to go backwards to go forward. Sometimes when I'm putting new things in place, I might go backwards a little bit. And I'm willing to tolerate that because I know where I'm going to end up. So what is my daily value? So if I'm doing 7,000 a day and my plan is 10,000, that's my daily value. And if that's what I plan to do, 10,000, I want to do a $12,000 template or $11,000 template so that I do get to 10,000. How many people understand what I just said, by the way, right? So we're going to teach you how to do that template. It's all recorded online as well. And then every day, how many referrals do I need to see? I need that clarity in my template. So that's number 2. Number 3 is what is the case value and case types that are coming in on those new patients. So it's really the same as my number of referrals, but I break it up a little bit. And then the daily cases completed, right? Because some cases take 3 or 4 visits and I charge once. And so on those days, I may collect all of it in advance, but on the next 2 days when they come in, there's no revenue associated with it. So I've got to deal with the cycles, but it's programmed into the template, right? And then the size of my inner community. Right? So that's 5. That's all that matters. And it's actually from the bottom up. The inner community drives my daily cases completed, determines my case value and case types, determines the number of referrals for me to do my daily value. I have never, ever worried about money. And don't get me wrong, I love money. Right? But I've never worried about it because I want all to look up at me. I only collect what I produce. I can only produce it if the patient says yes. The patient says yes to the treatment plans that I create based on their needs and the value that I create for it. And I can only do that if my referrals and my patients are referring to me. So I don't need to worry about collection. I just need to worry about what leads to collection. I don't work for collection, I work for the activity. So by programming my template and being clear about how many new patients I need, what are the case types I need, and programming those case types in, and the case values in, and then my referral activities programmed in. So you might think when I schedule, I don't schedule just the patient. I schedule all the referral activity as well. You will see it when we get there. So I don't leave it to chance. In my schedule is my PRD is going to go visit 6 people today and touch it. And they'll slow down for 2 people and do a lunch and learn. Right? Tomorrow they're going to be in the office for 4 hours to get prepared. And then in the afternoon they'll go. So it's all, you see it in the template. It's all in the template. You see the treatment coordinator in the template. What we do is, how many people agree with this? We look at the appointment book and we do what's in the appointment book, yes or no? Right? If it is not in the appointment book, we don't think about it. So I want to think about my PRD activity, my treatment coordinator activity, it's in the appointment book. Right? Dinners with my boys is programmed. If it's in the appointment book, I'm going to do it. If it isn't, it's going to be a coincidence. My workouts are programmed. Right? So that's the clarity I want to give you this afternoon when you come in, how we come up with a daily value and so on. Success belongs to those who create it. So here's what I look at life, right? I want to get to the top of that mountain, and there's that fog. And what most people do is wait for the fog to clear. I just take the next step, the next step, the next step, and I'll get to the mountain, right? So once I set a goal, I'm going to be forward moving. I don't need to understand the steps in between because I have belief in myself, my entrepreneurial capacity, and my clarity on what I want to accomplish. Is I do it one step at a time, I'll get there, right? So success belongs to those people that create it. So from self-leadership to interdependent, I only can lead myself. I can influence others, right? So if she's a self-leader and she's a self-leader and I'm a self-leader and we're working as a team, we then become interdependent with each other, all right? Because we each need each other to mutual growth as partners.